In this episode, we are looking at display and projector problems, because these are some of the easiest issues for users to notice and some of the easiest issues for beginners to misread. A user can see that the image is dim, stretched, blurry, discolored, cut off, flickering, or missing, but that does not mean the display itself is always the bad part. The problem may come from the cable, the port, the output setting, the display panel, the projector lamp, the source device, or even the way the projector is positioned in the room. A good technician learns to look at the image and ask what the image is trying to say instead of jumping straight to replacing the monitor or projector. Once you learn how to connect visual symptoms to likely causes, display support becomes much less confusing, and you stop treating every bad picture like a major hardware failure when many problems are actually caused by simple settings or connection mistakes. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first thing a beginner needs to understand is that a display problem is really a picture path problem. The image starts at the source device, travels through a graphics output, passes through a cable or wireless path, reaches a monitor or projector input, and then gets shown by the screen or projection system. If any one part of that path is wrong, the final image can look bad or fail completely. That is why a blank screen, wrong color, fuzzy picture, or distorted shape does not automatically mean the screen itself is broken. A technician should think about where the image is being created, how it is traveling, and how it is being shown. That simple idea helps a lot because users often point at the display and say the monitor is bad, while the real problem may be a loose cable, a wrong display mode, or a source device sending the wrong kind of signal. The display is where the symptom appears, but the real cause may be somewhere earlier in the path. One of the most common complaints is that the screen is blank, and this is where beginners need to slow down and separate no image from no power. If the monitor or projector has no sign of power at all, the problem may be the power source, the power cable, the power switch, or the unit itself. If the display clearly has power but shows no picture, then the problem may be the cable, the selected input, the source device, or the graphics output. A monitor may be turned on and still show no image simply because it is set to the wrong input. A projector may appear to be running, with fans and status lights active, but still show no usable image because it is waiting on the wrong source, or because the connected device is not actually sending video. For beginners, this is a very important habit. Always ask whether the display has power and whether it is receiving a signal before deciding the whole unit has failed. Dim output is another common symptom, and it can come from several very different causes. On a monitor, dim output may be caused by low brightness settings, a power-saving mode, backlight trouble, a failing panel, or even a user who accidentally changed the display settings without realizing it. On a projector, dim output often points more strongly toward lamp wear, dirt in the optical path, an aging light source, or a setting that has lowered brightness to save energy. The room itself also matters, because a projector in a bright room may look weak even when the projector is working normally. A technician should think about whether the dim image affects the whole screen evenly and whether the symptom changes when settings or room lighting change. If the image improves when brightness settings are corrected or when the room is darker, that tells a different story from a screen that stays weak no matter what. The key beginner lesson is that dim output is not always a dead display. Sometimes it is a normal settings issue, and sometimes it is a worn light source or aging panel. Color shift is another symptom users notice quickly because it makes everything look wrong, even when the image is still visible. A screen may look too blue, too red, too green, too yellow, or just washed out in a way that makes photos, icons, and text look unnatural. Sometimes this comes from display settings such as color profiles, temperature settings, or accessibility features. Sometimes it comes from a damaged or loose cable, especially if one part of the signal path is not making full contact. A bent pin on an older display connector can also cause strong color problems because one color channel may not be passing through correctly. Projectors can show color shift when internal parts age, when the source settings are wrong, or when the image mode is set for a different kind of content than the one being shown. A beginner should learn that color shift often points toward signal or settings problems before it points toward total display failure, and that is why checking cables and display modes early is such a smart habit. Dead pixels are one of the easiest problems to describe because they appear as tiny spots that stay dark or stay the wrong color no matter what is on the screen. A user may notice one black dot, one bright dot, or a small group of pixels that never behave like the rest of the display. This is usually a panel issue rather than a cable issue, because the rest of the image often looks normal while those same tiny spots keep appearing in the same place. A technician should understand that dead pixels and stuck pixels are not always the same thing. A dead pixel does not respond normally at all, while a stuck pixel may remain on one color instead of changing correctly. This kind of issue is usually tied to the screen hardware itself. For a beginner, the important point is that if a tiny defect stays in exactly the same physical spot no matter what content is displayed, the problem is probably inside the panel and not in the video cable, the graphics settings, or the operating system. Burn-in is another panel-related symptom, and beginners should understand it because users often describe it as a ghost image that will not go away. Burn-in means a faint image pattern remains visible even after the original content has changed. This is more often associated with display types that can hold a persistent image after the same content stays on the screen too long, especially bright logos, menus, or interface bars. A technician should not confuse true burn-in with temporary image retention because temporary retention may fade away after the display shows different content for a while. True burn-in is more stubborn and tends to remain in place even after rest or normal use. The important beginner lesson is that a faint old image shape that stays in the same place usually points toward the screen hardware itself, not toward the cable or the source device. If the old image pattern stays visible no matter what is connected, the display panel has likely developed a physical image problem. Flickering is a symptom that can come from more than one part of the display path, which is why it is so important to think carefully about it. A flickering image may come from a loose cable, a poor connector, a bad refresh setting, electrical instability, a failing backlight, or a graphics output problem from the source device. With projectors, flicker may also come from lamp issues or changes in how the light source is operating. The key question for a beginner is whether the flicker happens all the time, only with one source device, only with one cable, or only after the unit has been on for a while. If the flicker follows the cable or source, that points away from the screen panel. If the flicker happens no matter what source is connected, the display or projector itself becomes more suspicious. This matters because flicker is one of those problems that looks dramatic but can sometimes be solved by a very simple connection fix rather than a hardware replacement. Image distortion is a broad term, so a beginner should learn to break it into smaller types instead of treating it like one single problem. The image may look stretched, squashed, cut off at the edges, blurry, doubled, or out of proportion. On a monitor, this often points to wrong resolution settings, scaling settings, incorrect refresh settings, or a cable issue that is affecting signal quality. On a projector, distortion may also come from physical placement, lens adjustment, focus problems, or keystone correction needs. A technician should ask whether the shape of the image is wrong, whether the sharpness is wrong, or whether the alignment is wrong, because those are different clues. A blurry image often points toward focus, resolution mismatch, or signal quality trouble. A stretched or squashed image points more toward display settings or aspect ratio issues. A cut-off image may point toward overscan, wrong display mode, or source settings that do not match the display device correctly. Keystone issues are especially important with projectors because this is one of the most common visual problems in rooms where the projector is not positioned well. If the projector is too high, too low, or off to one side, the image may appear wider at one end and narrower at the other instead of forming a clean rectangle. That is a keystone problem, and it usually comes from projector position rather than from a broken cable or bad source device. Many projectors include keystone correction settings to help square up the image, but a technician should know that heavy correction is not always the best long-term answer if the projector can be physically positioned better. The cleaner solution is often to place the projector more directly in line with the screen so less electronic correction is needed. For beginners, the key idea is simple. If the projected image looks like a trapezoid instead of a rectangle, think first about position and projector alignment before blaming the cable, the computer, or the projector's internal image hardware. Blurry or soft images can also confuse beginners because they may seem like a failing monitor when the real issue is much simpler. On a projector, blur often comes from focus adjustment, dirty lens surfaces, low-quality source resolution, or projection on a poor surface. On a monitor, blur may happen when the display is not set to its native resolution, when scaling is handled poorly, or when the signal path is weak because of a bad cable or converter. A technician should pay attention to whether text is soft, whether edges look fuzzy, and whether the problem affects everything equally. If the display becomes sharp at the correct resolution, then the problem was likely a settings mismatch. If a projector becomes clear after focus adjustment, then the projector itself may be fine. This is a very helpful beginner lesson because it shows that poor image quality does not always mean damaged hardware. Often the image is simply being shown in the wrong way. Projectors add a few support ideas that beginners should learn early because they depend more on environment than a normal monitor does. Room lighting, screen surface, distance from the screen, airflow, and projector angle all affect how the final image looks. A projector may seem weak or washed out not because it is broken, but because the room is too bright or the wall surface is poor for projection. If the projector overheats, the image may dim, flicker, shut off, or behave inconsistently after some time in use. Dust also matters more with projectors because it can affect cooling and optical clarity. A technician should remember that a projector is not only a display device. It is also a room-dependent device. That means a support decision should include the environment, not just the hardware itself. A beginner who ignores the room may spend too much time blaming the projector when the real problem is the setup around it. Cables and ports deserve special attention because they are one of the most common causes of display trouble and one of the easiest things to overlook when the picture looks badly damaged. A damaged high-definition multimedia interface, HDMI, cable, a loose display port, DP, connection, or an older video graphics array, VGA, connector with damage can cause missing color, flicker, no signal, poor sharpness, or unstable display behavior. A beginner should remember that the cable does not have to be fully disconnected to cause trouble. A partly damaged connection can still pass some image information while making the picture look wrong in a way that seems much more serious than the real cause. This is why technicians think about the whole signal path instead of only the display. If a bad image changes when the cable is moved, reseated, or replaced, that is a strong clue that the display itself may be innocent and the problem is really in the connection. Settings problems are just as common as cable problems, especially in environments where users connect laptops to monitors, projectors, and docking setups all the time. The source device may send the wrong resolution, the wrong refresh rate, the wrong aspect ratio, or the wrong output mode for the display it is connected to. The system may be duplicating screens when it should be extending them, or sending the image to a second output the user is not actually watching. A projector may be expecting one input while the laptop is sending another. A monitor may look cut off or blurry because the source is not using settings that match the display well. Beginners should understand that a bad picture does not always mean damaged hardware. It often means the source and the display do not agree yet about how the image should be shown. That is why technicians always consider settings along with hardware when solving display problems. A useful beginner habit is to map the symptom to the most likely part of the path instead of trying random fixes. If the issue is one tiny spot that never moves, think panel defect. If the issue is trapezoid shape on a projector, think position and keystone. If the issue is whole screen dimness on a projector, think lamp, light source, or room conditions. If the issue is flicker or color loss that changes with cable movement, think connection path. If the issue is blur or stretching, think resolution, focus, aspect ratio, or scaling before thinking about dead hardware. This style of thinking keeps support work calm and organized. It also helps beginners avoid replacing a good monitor when the problem was just the wrong cable, or replacing a projector when the image only looked bad because it was aimed poorly and used in the wrong lighting conditions. By the end of this topic, display and projector problems should feel much more readable. Burn-in, dead pixels, dim output, color shift, flicker, blur, keystone distortion, and stretched images all point in different directions if you pay attention to the exact way the picture looks. Some symptoms suggest panel hardware, some suggest lamp or projector position, some suggest settings mismatch, and many suggest cable or signal path trouble. The big goal for a beginner is not to memorize every display technology in deep detail. The big goal is to learn that visual symptoms are clues. When you connect those clues to likely causes in the picture path, you troubleshoot faster, replace fewer good parts, and give users better answers than just saying the screen looks bad and guessing from there.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.